Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach Podcast. I'm Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today, for a second time, we have Varun Duggirala on our podcast. We're going to be talking about happiness and mental fitness. Now, this is the second episode. If you've missed the first episode, go listen to that because there is a continuation taking place. Enjoy. So, mental fitness started taking place.
Yeah.
Then, how did you get down this rabbit hole of happiness? Like, what has that journey been? And what are you learning?
So what it started off with therapy, to be very honest. Because one of the things I really wanted to work on is, like I in many ways have the kind of life I always wanted, right? I wanted to be financially secure. I wanted to be married to someone who was not just like a partner. Someone like Pooja and I are literally like she's the closest person in my life in everything. We share everything. In terms of just like conversations, we go super deep with some of these things, and it's gone deeper through the pandemic. Have a daughter is exactly the kind of dorky, fun person who I would ever want as a child.
Oh, nice.
And so we have all of this, but at some point I'm like, I still have to work through some of my natural tendencies. I'm a person who is not good with any form of conflict. I will sweep something under the rug, but not talk about it. Now, not even go to the other person, this thing. I will also have this outburst from time to time because I'm generally a very calm person in the worst situations. But I will have outbursts at the most random things. So it started off in therapy where I was like, I want to understand why I behave like this. I want to understand why my relationship with some people in my family is a certain way. Why do I behave a certain way with my daughter? Where I never thought I'll be the strict parent. I am the strict parent. But I'm also the silly one. But I fluctuate in silly and strict. And therein, this topic of happiness came up a few times. And I started reading up about it. And weirdly enough, and I know I'm not that old, a lot of the stuff I started reading around happiness always focuses on people beyond a certain age. Because oftentimes in your 20s and your 30s, happiness comes to you in spurts. And you enjoy the fleetingness of it. But I feel as you get older, you look at happiness almost like something you want to be more everlasting. Because I feel, and I think I learned about this whole thing about you have your fluid intelligence curve and your crystallized intelligence curve, right? Where when you're younger, you are going through a fluid intelligence curve, where you're really kind of driven by, all the knowledge you're kind of getting in and you're getting all of that stuff. At some point, and that helps you go up your career ladder, helps you progress in life, but that is bound to dip. Like you will not be the young, cool, best performing person in your office for too long. At some point, you'll have that dip going down. And at that dip is when you shift from what is your fluid intelligence to your crystallized intelligence, which is basically wisdom, right? They say wisdom only comes when you're older because at some point you're jumping from, I have a lot of knowledge now. Let me crystallize it into a few things, which is why you are in many ways taking off the stuff you know. You are letting go of a lot of the stuff you know, focusing on a bunch of things and crystallizing that. If you don't hop from one to the other quickly enough, you will not be happy because you're trying to find happiness in your career or all the stuff you would get satisfaction from in your 20s or early 30s. Versus when you get older, what you value are relationships or the fact that you're giving back to the world. You only hear all of this stuff when someone's a little older, right? Or like the fact that do I have friendships and people who are closer to me who I can actually talk about stuff more than just like how my workday went. And the more I started reading about this stuff, I feel like I call myself older than I am because I feel older. But it just made sense. It's just like, okay, one second, we got to look at happiness as something more than just I want to be happy all the time because you can't be happy all the time. And weirdly, when you are happy, you get that spike of, it could be a spike of dopamine or whatever else you're kind of getting. Your body will push you back. Your mind will push you back to almost bring you back to balance.
A set point.
And almost that reset point takes you in the opposite direction. Which is why when you have a really good, you have a high point in life, you weirdly feel this downer right after because your mind's recalibrating you. Come back to the neutral position, but you go off. And you have to understand that. So today I feel that downer. I'm like, one second, I'm just kind of going back to it. Don't have to let it affect me. Which helps me also not react adversely. Because I feel what happens to me is I'll hold through the pressure of a lot of stuff happening, not react to it, till it builds up to a level where a small thing, very random thing will trigger me and it will be an outburst.
The suppression, pressure cooker kind of
You're
thing.
holding the pressure in your mind.
Yeah.
Versus if you feel and you find a way to release that pressure with every interaction, you then don't necessarily have to have that outburst, but it requires you to be open about it. You need to be open about, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is what you're saying. You also don't have to sound like a therapist or this thing, but
So often it end up talking like that, right?
I'm told, my friends keep telling me this, like when I go for a drink and stuff like that. Don't make this a session. I'm like, I'm not a therapist, dude. But it's like, don't make it a session. But I feel it's that. And happiness is also, it can't just be about you. It has to be about people around you. It has to be about people you're connected to. Could be friends, could be family, could be community. If it's only self, it's never happiness. Because you will think that, oh, I'll buy something new, I'll feel happy. But if you realize till you buy something, you're happy. After you bought it, you're actually never happy. You always want the next thing.
The more.
Yeah, it's always the add to cart. So I actually do this weird thing where I add stuff to cart, never buy them. Then I move them to buy later. My satisfaction has happened. I have not even spent the money. Perfect. Like don't spend the money, just do that. And it's just those things. I mean, I can just go on, but
Do you have a definition for happiness?
I don't yet. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I mean,
Does your course have a definition for happiness, the one that you're doing with Harvard?
So the course is telling me that it's a balance of four things. It's still, what I like about it is, and this is by Arthur Brooks, and Arthur Brooks has written a bunch of stuff on this. He has a great book called Strength to Strength, which talks about this. He doesn't define it as much as, I mean, there is a definition, but I'm still not sure if it's so simple that I'm like, sometimes I wonder about it. It's basically, it's almost a wants, it's, let me remember that properly. Expectations minus your, it's an equation. I'll have to look that one up. But wait, I'm going to pick this one up.
Is this the one which is that expected desire was expected outcome kind of thing?
No, I'll tell you. I always forget this. Terrible memory in life.
You're old now. That's why. Clearly.
So old. In my head, I'm old. My mother's also telling me, you talk like this old person.
Now start Brahmi. You have to start almonds.
Don't get me started on almonds. That's like one thing I've been like.
Acetyl L-carnitine. I can give you a whole list of stuff for your head.
So if I remember right, and I can't find it, results minus expectations is happiness.
Results minus expectations.
Yeah. So if your expectations are more and what you get is less, that is the balance. So oftentimes we want so much more, and what we end up getting will always be lesser than what we want.
Correct.
So you're never fully happy. If you want less, then
happiness multiplies dramatically.
Because happiness is about being. I think there's a lot more to being peaceful with happiness than it is to saying it's not joy. Joy is different. I think we also like misconstrue joy and as happiness.
Happiness, joy, pleasure, bliss, all of these are mixed up.
Yeah. And happiness is a nice calm state of like it's pleasant.
Correct.
Joy is like high energy outburst, like oh my god, I got joy. Although there's a book called Joyful, which is a nice book because it tells you the things you can put around you in your environment to trigger joy.
Nice.
Like just like having plants around, or like what colors trigger most joy, what elements can be. So it's very like
very practical, usable,
physical space usage versus like okay in your head and all that stuff.
Have you read Joy on Demand?
No.
Oh, must read. So it is by this Buddhist monk who used to work in Google. And he's using Google systems to help with meditation and joy. Very nice book on understanding joy from that point of view.
But there's so much there, right? Because if you think about this, and we also say, okay, you can't. And I sometimes one of my favorite things to say is that we can't all afford all the therapy, all the business coaches, everything else that we need in our life. We can't also all like retire and go off live in the hills, live on the beach and stuff. We have to still live in the real world. So instead of going and looking for these big ticket moments to find joy or happiness, there's these tiny things which give it to you all day long. We just don't notice them.
Yeah.
It's like that I mean, the Western side will say the first bite of pizza. I'll say the first bite of biryani.
Hmm.
Always, right? Like that
For
that
smell of
moment,
biryani only. So
smell
starts
only
with,
biryani,
huh.
right? Or i- for me, it's like there are sometimes at night I'm sleeping and our daughter still sleeps on our bed because it became a thing which happened in pandemic and we've just not. None of us have. We all have like separation anxiety with that now. Um, but you're sleeping next to your daughter and sometimes in the night she kind of this tiny hand grips your finger.
Aw.
That is it, right? It's a tiny thing, but it's so like it stays with you.
Hmm.
And instead of moving past it, you need to kind of stay with it. And I suck at meditation, so that hasn't helped. My mind is like from a Bombay context, like the other station most times. But
But
I,
when your minds are like the other station, so one small side,
mm,
you need to be a hawker at the other station.
yeah,
Right? You just need to watch it go past.
that's what I'm been learning to do. So I used to try and control it,
Hmm.
and say I want to clear my mind. Never happened. So I feel in recent times, I've also realized I don't do it the traditional way, and I realize it doesn't have to be the traditional way. Like in the mornings, that half an hour, sometimes it's longer, especially on weekends. I just sit. So we thankfully have a small balcony. I'll sit there with that lime water, and I'm just looking out at the same thing I can look out every day. But it's just nice, just do 10 minutes of that. You don't have to do an actual meditative practice. Although I do that before going to sleep. I do one of I use the Calm app and I do like a good 10-minute thing before going to bed and I sleep so well. Although sometimes if I listen to the Jay Shetty version on Calm, it gives me more thoughts come in and I don't sleep properly because he triggers so many thoughts in my head. But it's just that you need to find those small moments and you need to value them more. And more than actually, value is the wrong word. You need to stay with them more. I feel
Yeah.
the stay is the problem. Is that we move quickly past the stuff which satisfies us because they're mundane and they're daily. But it could be the coffee. It could be like people talk about sitting and making that cup of chai in the morning. I understand that is literally there. It's that small point of happiness
Yes.
and joy, and we let that go. That weirdly, that insight didn't come from anything I read. Have you seen this movie called Soul?
Mm-hmm.
So a Pixar movie called
Oh,
Soul.
yes, of course. Yeah.
Towards the end of it, that main character, the realization he has, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On IVM, like Snehal, Antriksh, and Nikhil compile a list of their favorite patriotic movies on the occasion of Independence Day. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Puneet, Harsh, and Meghna chat about the political upheaval in Bihar. On Varta Lab, Akash and Naveen chat with fellow comedian Sumit Saurabh about his outing on Amazon Prime Video, Vanch Kanash. On Do What Floats Your Boat, Danish speaks to YouTuber and gaming content creator Myth Pat, where they dive deep into the world of gaming. And on Marathi Khidki Tun, the Deshmukhs explain why protecting and conserving the environment is important. Once again, would like to remind you all about our merch. There's some amazing stuff out there. Please go to our website, ivmpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab and do check out what's available there. I'm sure you'll find something you like. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And also, I'd like to remind you all to please tell a friend about this show if you're enjoying it. It will give you somebody to talk to the show about. Yeah, it really does help us too, so that too. Also, please rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on, and you can check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website which basically lists all our YouTube channels. Please go check that out. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Boat Lifestyle, Small Case, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Is this right? And he looks around his environment and he sees that one pizza shop. He sees that tree with the leaf kind of coming off. And I also understand why people say you should go spend more time in nature. Like every trip I've made, I've tried to now make. And it's be the guy like, no, I want to go shop. I want to go. Now I'm like, can we go to a park? Can we go I've always been a beach person. I can go to the beach, but not like a hectic beach, right?
A chill beach.
Yeah. And I was in therapy the other day and we traced this back. So when I was a kid, where I grew up, Kakinada, has a beach. Not a crowded beach. I mean, it's largely like there's a lot of industries and stuff near it. So it was largely empty, except on a Sunday when families would come there. And I used to take the moped or a cycle and go all the way to the beach and sit there by myself occasionally. And I used to really enjoy that. And I think back on that today, that was me just finding that space which is why the sound of the ocean for me is like one of my biggest, like, in a good way, trigger points to just kind of like feel calmer.
Lovely.
Because it's embedded in my mind from the time I'm a kid that you're next to the ocean, you just hear that kind of thing going up, back and forth. I think back on some of the trips I made when I was like, I'd work for like 60, 90 days on shoot schedules early in my Channel V days. And I would say I'm just going, and I would get onto a bus by myself and go to Goa. Not to party and stuff like that. I would just be around the beach. So in hindsight, I was doing all these things. I just hadn't put it down as a system.
Nice.
As, okay, whenever I'm feeling a certain way, let me just kind of go and let me be next to the ocean sound. If I can't, I just play the ocean sound. Hence why lo-fi seems to work really well for me. But you got to find those things. You got to find those things that trigger these emotions in you. And they kind of like help you kind of get perspective as well.
What are 5 of your favorite happiness habits or mental fitness habits that you have?
Pausing is actually my favorite habit.
Tell us about that.
So I would always use this term thing. That irritating person who always pauses when they're talking and be like, can you just like stop pausing so much? I have so much like respect for everybody who pauses a lot, because that's when you're actually allowing yourself to think, right? Often as you're moving from, and in today's world, moving from one to the next, one to the next, one to the next. When you're taking a pause, you're reflecting on the past. You're focusing on where you are, you're being present. And you're projecting yourself towards the future you want to kind of get to. If you don't do that, you're always on that treadmill. But even when you are working out, you're giving yourself those breaks. There's that rest period. It's so important, like 30 seconds, 1 minute, 90 seconds. That gives you more clarity, gives you more balance, gives you all these things more than anything else. Your mental fitness, for me, revolves around the right pauses in between activity. So the number one thing for me in being mentally fit is to really using pauses, right? A pause is not picking up your phone.
Correct.
I am as guilty as most people for doing that all the time. So pauses are one. I feel movement is another. When your body is moving, you're naturally in a certain form of flow state. And I have found this for myself, that when I'm in a certain flow state, when your body is in that, your mind also kind of opens up to it. So even if I'm doing like a really tricky thing in the gym, which has like weights and I have to move a certain way, there is a certain calmness to my mind, and it brings about ideas and thoughts and stuff, even though they might be moving away from this. So moving is so important. Just sitting will never give the ideas. Just I'm like brainstorms never worked. Finally I'm right, at least in my head.
Walking storms, huh?
Walking storms, or just move, right? Movement is one of the most underrated pieces.
And we don't do it enough at all.
They're actually one of the best examples I heard. Again, on a podcast, I heard it. There is a tribe called the Amara tribe. I think they're North American. I'm not sure. North American, South American, but they're the Americas for sure. They have this. They look at running as a spiritual practice. And they run.
Are these the guys that hold the water in their mouth and run? This is a different tribe.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check that one. And they run every morning with their arms wide towards the sun.
Wow.
And no earphones, obviously, none of those things, right? And they say that is the most spiritual thing they can do, because you are taking away all distractions. You're being one with your body, you're moving with your body. And that for them is how they want to begin their day.
Nice.
Now think about how we all move, right? You put in music, you listen to a podcast, you'll talk to someone on the phone.
No connection with the world around you.
Just like switch off in silence, which we all kind of really like worry about, comes the most amount of clarity, right? And also the most amount of creativity, which is actually my third one, which is silences are things which I'm valuing more now to be mentally fit. Doesn't mean you have to be this recluse. But I just think that there is a sound to silence which kind of helps, and can't put it in any other way.
Now especially.
Now especially. And although the word stillness seems to give more value than silence, I still prefer the word silence, because I think there's a certain vibe that comes with the word silence, which which I feel also brings, again, it comes down to, again, I keep going back to balance and clarity and
It's that library feeling, right? It's just like,
yeah. And you need, because it also allows you to get bored.
Hmm.
And being bored is a good thing.
Hmm.
I think being bored is a bad thing. Being bored is the best
Very,
thing.
very good thing.
Being bored is when you get the best brain waves, which is when your imagination kind of goes wild. Which is why I think back on many classes in college and school where I had the best ideas and thoughts because the class was so boring. I was to do this weird thing though. So imagine my professor in diapers whenever I was bored.
It's still a poop theme.
So much fun. Imagine like the most boring lecture, right? Your professor's in diapers. Suddenly the whole idea has transformed in your head, right? So I would start with these, and there's a last one which I think it's a trickier one because it's not foolproof because it can go really sideways, which is talking to yourself. And I feel oftentimes a lot of self-help moves talking to yourself to saying literally talking to yourself.
Correct.
It could just be writing something down. It could just be, it comes off the silence, comes off all of that stuff. You don't necessarily have to look in a mirror and saying, you're the best. Although that works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who do that every morning and they come out like fully charged. It's the best. Anil Kapoor sing. Anil Kapoor, I was watching an interview, I think this was Zoya Akhtar's movie, Dil Dhadakne Do. And I think Ranveer Singh and Farhan Akhtar talking about how like Anil Kapoor literally would look in the mirror every morning and do his like chin up like this and saying, "You're fabulous," and he would walk out, right? It's like you can imagine an Anil Kapoor doing that, but that's why he comes out the way he does.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So you need to find your way to speak to yourself. Let me just put it that way, because we don't talk to ourselves or treat ourselves the way we want other people to talk to us or treat us.
Yeah.
And that is where the biggest problem lies. Because you're judging yourself. You tell yourself all the negative things. You're never telling yourself like,
Sabash.
good job, man. Like you're fine. Like or like one of my favorite things, right? I have like supreme spotlight effect all the time. Like everyone's looking at me. Everyone's saying something about me throughout my life. Now I'm a little better. Now I'm like, I call it like, it's fine. It's why I dress a certain way. I often overthink my dressing on like one second. I want to wear this really like random thing, but maybe should I not? No, let's let that one be. So figure a way to talk to yourself the way you'd want people to talk to you. As long as you don't have that expectation from other people, your conversations with yourself itself satisfy you enough that the stuff other people say to you don't bother you as much.
Yeah.
So I mean, off the top of my head, these are the ones I would pick. I mean, I could maybe think of more, but these
Fantastic.
are the ones front and center.
Last thing, if you knew all of this stuff when you were, very actively building your business, working at that point of time, how would your life have been different?
I would make less excuses for the way I lived my life.
Okay.
So, for example, I wouldn't travel when I was building the business, even if it meant meeting family, like meeting
Non-work travel.
non-work travel. Forget holiday. Holiday was not even happening. Even if like sisters in another city, another country, make a visit to meet her, not her having to visit me. And it's something which I have thought about a lot and spoken to her about in recent years. Or something as simple as making the effort to go back home, meet grandparents, meet mom, meet dad. But because you always consider that a second part. But if you want to make the time, you can. And the more you do these things, the better you perform in the time you have at work. I feel the excuse of I have work is an easy crutch when you can actually make the time. I don't think it's about what your career stage is like. Because like even I was talking to someone the other day about someone said, okay, you do so many things. Because you're in a business, you have 3 podcasts, you do YouTube, you're doing Instagram Reels, you wrote a book, you did all this stuff. How do you manage your time? I said, my day is literally broken into 3 chunks. There is no scheduling. I'm very bad at managing otherwise. So there is the first part is the time you can't control. Which is with work. Because it's a meeting, it's a client, it's someone else. You can't control that. All you can do is schedule it within that time. So let's say from like 10:30, 11 until 5, 6 is that time. So I'm not controlling that time at all.
But
that
you're
is
still
controlled
working till
by
5, you're still doing all
I
of
still
that.
work till 5-6.
Yeah.
And it's controlled by exterior parties.
Hmm.
Then there is time with people closest to you. So for me, like that morning time and evening time is family, friends, going meeting. What I'm also expanding that to is friends now, because it became only family. Also, 2 years of pandemic made me a bit of a recluse with friends, and I'm changing that now. So then those two periods on the top and bottom of that. But the earliest and the last things are time for myself. Now, as long as you look at your day like that, some days will be off, but that's all you have to manage. But all those three are taken care of in a day.
Correct.
And some days work will take over. Some days life will take over. You won't feel it as much. And these, honestly, you can do. All you have to do is, like me, not watch as much Netflix, or not
Scroll Instagram.
which I do too much. My only guilty pleasures, I feel, are Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, I think I would change that, because I felt I always used I have work as an easy crutch,
Correct.
and I don't think I needed to. I could have done that part differently. And I would also judge myself less. Like, I've always been the person who judges myself way too much. I've never had confidence. Still don't most times on myself. So I think I would do less of that as well. I'm like, it's fine. Just try it out. What is the worst case scenario? You'll work beyond that is what I would do. Two primary things would be these.
Fantastic. I love the way that, these changes that you would have done in your past, eventually that happiness that it comes around is not about the work that you do, or that more. It's about all those other aspects of life, the family, the way you brought it in, the way that you're talking about, how you're going to take care of yourself. That me time is so critical in getting in this. Varun, thank you so much for coming on the
Thanks
Happy
for
Coach
having me.
podcast. This is such a fantastic episode. I love the way that we've just moved around all over the place, but we've got our mental fitness and our happiness in. Love it. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Man. So it was lovely to talk about all this stuff.
Yay.